Hi everyone, welcome to the second season of Grow This, Grow That podcast by Vectorly. This time we discuss engineering management to find out how to make software developer teams more efficient and happy. Today we have a great discussion about productivity with two prominent engineering managers, Dhara Doshi and Yao Xiao. Find new episodes on all streaming platforms or our website. Thanks for being with us and enjoy listening. Let's start. Hi, my name is Chunko. Today we're recording the podcast Grow This, Grow That, devoting to the topic of engineering productivity. And today we have on our call two engineering managers, Yao and Dara, who's joined our call to share their opinions on engineering productivity. Yao and Dara, could you please introduce, yourself? We can start with Dara, if you don't mind, Yao, and then we will start with the topics.
Definitely. Hey everyone, so this is Dhara here. I work as an engineering manager at a Bay Area startup called Everlaw, and I'm very excited to join the Grow This, Grow That episode. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
That's great. Thank you, Dara. Yao, could you please also introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. Hello everyone, this is Yao. I'm currently engineering director at AiBee, which is a 4-year-old startup at Bay Area as well. So what we mainly does essentially to apply AI technologies to offline retail space. And I'm really happy to join this episode and looking forward to the discussion.
That's great. Thank you guys for introducing yourself. And so I guess we can start with the first question. So we as we discuss in the developer productivity and major sense, what do you think? What factors major influence developer productivity? I could start, I guess, with a few things. For me, one of the major factors when I was being a developer myself, one of the main factors that influenced my productivity as the developer was how I'm being instructed with my manager and whether I clearly understood the short-term and the long-term vision for the product and the work that I've been doing. Sometimes it's quite hard to, when you're getting all the issues into the backlog and you're just don't understand the bigger part of that. And for me, having the influence on the longer term understanding what I'm building, and when the manager or the product team is sharing with me what we're building, having some product demos as a result of being built sprints, it hugely motivated me because I've seen the real work as the result. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So I think the most important thing, one of the very important things here is that, so to be able to understand the broader context, right? So essentially, what's the meaning of the task right now we are working on, right? How will that be, how the impact will be demonstrated later on in the product, right? So I think that's actually going to be one of the key motivation to keep, I guess, the team members being motivated and also being productive.
To add to that, I think, yeah, definitely keeping the developers engaged and motivated is important. And we do that through kind of giving them, the long-term vision of any feature that is being added to a product. But again, it also comes down to creating an environment where the developer feels free to ask questions. Many a times the developers, when they don't get answers, they have to make assumptions. And mostly, these assumptions, they end up being very expensive for product development. So I feel like, creating an environment where, we make as less assumptions as we can. And basically, we empower the developers to ask as many questions, before even development has started, would be a great way to kind of, improve the productivity.
I see. I broadly, I guess I could bring some more context. I think that there are three major types of factors that influence developer productivity generally. First is the psychological one that comes from when the person actually feeling psychologically motivated, that he doesn't have some monotonous work, some very high on the time pressure or isolation, as we are being currently working remote. That also could be a major factor that influence my productivity. I'm feeling alone for too long. Another type of factors that we've actually started from the manager controls, like unclear goals or expectations or something, and the developer and the factor that actually a developer control, like his skills or whether he invests too much time into prototyping or polishing code or something. What do you think about things like is it manager's role that to create? Dara already mentioned it, so to say, that create a sort of the environment. What parts of this environment are needed for the productive developer work? What do you think? What does environment need to be included, and what environment must be created by the manager to make the work of developer as productive as possible?
I think, to reiterate myself, psychological safety, is a concept that's talked about a lot these days in engineering circles. And psychological safety is something that's very important for any leader, and especially for engineering leaders. And what I mean by psychological safety is the developers feel empowered, developers feel fearless in asking those questions, um, and having a dialogue, right? And kind of sharing their thought process, sharing their opinion, giving their ideas and suggestions about improving different aspects of the engineering process. So, like one of the things that can be done is conducting regular surveys, engagement surveys, motivational surveys, where people are asked to kind of give their feedback as to like how did they feel over this quarter. Did they get a chance to work on things that they really wanted to, things like that. So basically breaking it down into really minute details about aspects which developers definitely care about, and getting the feedback on that, and then taking that and kind of collaborating some results, and then coming to a conclusion that okay, maybe these are the top most factors which are kind of important for developers, and let's set up some goals and OKRs with respect to that. So I think that would be a start.
And
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what Daryl said just now. And I think one thing I want to add on that. So I think it's like if you consider one kind of a product feature life cycle, right? So naturally it's usually initiated from either user requirements, right? Essentially a business requirement, and then it comes down to the product definition, and then there will be a design and implementation phase, and later on will be actually released. Right, this is kind of one cycle. I think the important thing is that to make sure the engineers working on some given project or given features feel motivated and feel being more productive, is that make sure this kind of make sure that the communication is two-way communication, not just one-way communication. Like what I mean by that is that, so essentially when the feature requirement being initiated, we needed to at the very beginning to include all the engineers and all other stakeholders in the discussion to make sure we all agree upon on the actual outcome, right? And then from there, essentially everyone will be working towards that one common objective. That's actually you make sure that all the engineers working on this project feels their opinion is being evaluated, and also because we discussed all these different approaches, all these different opinions, and achieve a consensus as a first place. So everyone also will be quite aligned, and that will usually result in a much better productivity at the end as well.
I get it. Thank you for sharing this, guys. So I guess from that point we can go organically to the second one when we as we majorly described factors that influence developer productivity. We create a sort of the environment with list of factors that make developer more productive, and this all influence developer productivity in a good way. But there is another concept that comes in. Well, after you create in this environment, you still need to make a sort of the manager, make a sort of the measurement units that how you can actually assess the developer productivity. Dara already mentioned some KPIs and the OKRs to make it more transparent. But generally, there is a bigger reason, and the bigger topic that I want to discuss at first, whether developer productivity been measured in some measurement units, and what are the pros and cons of this approach, and what your personal experience tells in that you've been as an engineer manager, so you've been developers, now you're managing other developers. It would be great if you could share on the both sides the pros and cons from your personal experience on that.
So I think how to measure productivity, there are some very definite ways I know how not to measure productivity. So the topmost
Mm-hmm.
being lines of code. So never measure
Yeah.
developer productivity by lines of code, because writing many lines of code as compared to lesser lines is not a good indication of developer productivity. Overall, the more lines of code you write, the more you have to maintain it, the more you have to test it. So yeah, that is not a good indicator of measuring developer productivity. So what can be, like what is a
Mm-hmm.
good indicator? I feel sometimes we talk about concepts such as velocity, like how many, and stuff like how many tickets are being done, say in a sprint, or like how much time does it take approximately for a developer to kind of build something, like uh, from the time that a feature has been designed to it's being basically being shipped. um, but I feel like there's no true answer to this. The idea is not to measure developer productivity as such, but try to understand where the developer is, where majority of developer time is going. So, for example,
Mm-hmm.
when a particular feature starts getting developed, there is some lead time where the designer has to work on it with the product person, provide all aspects, all workflows, um, kind of try to keep the developer workflow very streamlined after that. Now, if this step is not done correctly, the developer might go and implement something, make some assumptions, and then like eventually once everything is done, a feedback comes from the product team that okay, this is not what we intended. So that means the entire process became very expensive. So to cut it short, there are different aspects of this software development life cycle, which we can try to kind of tighten up a little bit. Um, basically gather metrics around each of these steps. So how much time it takes for design, how much time it takes for the developer to then implement stuff. Uh, is there a back and forth which is happening between design and development after that? And there's going to be some back and forth, but how much is acceptable? After that, how much time goes in QA? Now, I think this is one aspect where we can actually measure productivity with respect to a developer. Once it goes to QA, there should not be obvious QA issues, like things which should normally work. Like the developer should put in some effort in doing their own QA and make sure basic things work. And QA is responsible for kind of handling all the corner cases, integration cases, etc. So this is one place where we can check okay how many bugs were raised and how many of those were things that the developer could have resolved on their own. That is one feedback that can be definitely given to the developer to improve their productivity and overall the team's productivity. Beyond that, I think even the part of the entire developer workflow, right? Like once they have committed the code, how much time does it take for a code review? Is it taking 2 days? Is it taking 1 day? Right? Are there delays with respect to that? Once the code is merged, if we are running, say Circle CI, so basically builds are happening, right? So these builds, how much time do these builds take place? Take. So if it's every build is taking say 20 minutes, there's a long time basically. So figuring out if we can kind of get some metrics around all these steps, and then trying to tighten it on every end. So that's my holistic view about like measuring productivity in general.
I get it. So the idea is not to focus on what one metric, so to say, but look on much comprehensive assessment. So you're just seeing on all steps what it takes, and for different step, you may actually use different metrics. Like, for example, code churn in the end when you have in the QA how many pull requests been reverted or something on the later stages. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that's me personally actually share the same idea. Yeah, what do you think in this?
Yeah, actually, if I have to give a short answer for this, I guess my keyword will be impact. So I know impact being, it's a little bit vague, but I think emphasizing on impact actually clarifies a few things, right? First of all, as Dhara alluded to as well, so we should be impact over activity, right? For example, the one very bad example being measuring productivity is going to be line of code, or it's going to be how many hours you spend on work, right? So I think that's very important. And the second of all, also by emphasizing impact means that being engineers, I think by the most that it's gonna be focusing on problem solving, right? So sometimes you don't even need to write a line of code if you can somehow solve the problem on hand. So I think that's also very important concept, that being focusing on impact means that so ultimately what we care about is solve the problem we are facing. So I guess so that's actually essentially means that the impact driven productivity measurement actually, in my opinion, comes to essentially two forms. So the one form is going to be a little bit medium to long term form that's going to be guided by either OKR or KPI, right? That's essentially the importance of that is essentially that to trying to align the definition of impact, right? Align the objectivity, align the definition impact, so everyone on the team will know, given us some task, so how are we going to define the success, right? How are we going to define the impact? I think that's actually give a medium and long term. We essentially give you a guideline, right? And then another form is essentially going to be a little bit short term. I think the short term actually, a few techniques I usually use is that first of all, we do daily stand-ups. I think that's very important to make sure. So essentially, they're usually a group of people working towards the same goal, right? We want to make sure so everyone kind of making good progress. There's no someone being blocked by others, so on and so forth, right? So essentially, having this daily stand-up will be a very great tool for all the team members on the team to figuring out the priority in the short term, right? For example, if you are being blocked by someone else's work, right? So you guys then can figure out how we can block that in a more efficient way. I think overall, so essentially to summarize, essentially that I think impact is essentially impact can be a proxy as a measurement for the productivity, and also to make sure in order to make sure this impact driven measurement can work. So we usually need to combine both this medium to long term objective alignment and also the short term kind of reshuffling regarding this short term priority and the different speeds moving out from different stakeholders.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that, Yao. And that's great that you actually made it for long-term and the short-term tools that and ways to measure productivity, because it's the other thing that is really important. Depending on the case. We actually, the thing that we haven't touched, considering the considering the developer productivity, and whether we actually started to talk more about how to measure developer productivity, what we need to include. But as engineering managers, have you experienced anything when you started to measure developer productivity, but generally you've seen some counter reaction that, for example, developers started acting different or they want to be measured? And if so, when it happened? Because you both shared the idea that it's very important to make the transparent communication. And my personal experience shows that usually it's the way when you don't like when you are being measured is when it's not transparent, when it's not fair, and the rules of the game are like constantly changing, so you can't actually influence it. What your personal experience shows you? What do you think of it? What things may influence that developer don't buy the idea of measuring of the productivity?
Yeah, I guess actually probably I can share one example. Well, I mean, right now with AiBee, and before that I was at Google, being a IC, right? So being a developer, I think one actually, I mean, the first thing jumped to my head when Chongkai, you mentioned that thing, that so back at Google, actually there's a very critical measurement in terms of, probably not directly in terms of productivity, but that's going to be one key point, one key aspect in this performance packet, right? So essentially we do performance review twice a year. And then in your performance report, you need to showcase your capability of writing design docs and leading the implementation, right? So the design doc actually being the way, essentially being the paper trail of your work in some sense. So what you can see actually is that when this performance review deadline approaches, so there will be a lot of engineers actually trying to backfill the design doc, right? But the project is already done, right? When you do the backfilling of the design doc, I mean, there's still some value. You can do some reflection, but that's not what is supposed to be done, right? So design doc is supposed to be the first step before you're doing the actual implementation. So I think that's actually probably a counter example. I mean, the kind of a negative example of the productivity measurement. Essentially, usually, I mean, people will say that like it's kind of a essentially like how the outcome essentially depends on how do you define the measurement, right? If you define measurement being that design doc is like 100% important than anything else, then people will just, in my opinion, waste a lot of time doing this.
I think what Yao is talking about is very similar to, kind of gaming the metrics. So when we set, metrics as such, sometimes people can get obsessed trying to, just game it. And they would, that's actually counter, productive, because people are now less motivated to, kind of make the right decisions. And even if something is taking time, to develop, because we want to develop it the right way. Just because now metrics are in place, and they know that, okay, finally success means kind of, getting ahead of these metrics. Engineers might game it, and that's not good, either, in the short term or the long term. So that is one, disadvantage of kind of having very, where you can kind of see a subtle pushback for metrics from engineers.
I see. I guess we can continue from this point. We're already like ran half of our time for the podcast yet. So just to keep on the timing, and not taking too much time from our evening. So the next thing that I will ask, and that we'll try to that we have partly started to talk when we see the short-term problems with the productivity of developers. What can engineering manager can do about it? What's, for example, I think we can start. I can start from my personal experience. One of the best ways when I notice when someone is having some terms of the productivity, usually it's very hard to notice if you are not having regular conversation, like, for example, one-on-one, when you are sharing, when you're just having regular keep in touch or using some, I don't know, async communication for these one-on-ones, when you're sharing what goes on in terms of your productivity, whether you're feeling fine or not, what your personal experience tells you on the role of engineering manager, and helping, how can engineering manager can help developer to stay productive, and when the engineering manager finds the developer low, what are like the first step that you need to undertake in order to help the developer come back to more productive and motivated state?
This is basically very, just following best practices with respect to one-on-ones, um, to help developers stay productive. And if you think that, okay, they are floundering a little bit, guidance, very objective feedback about, what's going wrong, and having that environment again, like making that, creating that environment for them. So always meeting, each of your reports once a week, having a running document for your one-on-one where, there are maybe templated questions as to, okay, what is in the developer's mind? How can, the manager unblock them with respect to any obstacles that they are facing? Um, Anything that they want to discuss, basically keep this document as a store for, like throughout the week. If they think they want to discuss something with the manager, encourage them to, write that down. Um, and having this time, this one-on-one, not to focus on the tasks, but rather to understand the goals of the engineer, trying to understand, and, kind of help them, kind of grow, support them to grow. Now, in case they are floundering, best way is, kind of provide them feedback. Every week you're meeting with them, and, giving specific objective feedback is always something, that people appreciate, because it gives them an opportunity to, kind of learn from their mistakes and to grow. So if the engineering manager has an insight as to how this engineer can do better, feel free to give it to them. Always, again, the rule is praise in public, and, like if you have to give any negative feedback, do it in private. So these one-on-ones are, the perfect times to kind of provide that kind of feedback, and then follow up with the engineer. So maybe give them specific ways in which, how they can improve, and then follow up with them. Okay, did they do that? Did they see any progress? And guide them through that process about, getting better.
Yeah, what do you think? I actually totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree with Dara's points. That what do you think?
Yeah, I think Dara summarized pretty well about one-on-ones. I probably can talk a little bit on, I guess, like what will I usually do, like after spotting some low productivity issues on the team, right? So essentially, I think the first of all, so how we, I mean, what kind of proxy I use to identify low productivity. So essentially, as I mentioned earlier, so we usually actually do have this kind of a project-oriented daily stand-ups. So essentially, to make sure everyone on that project stay up to date, right? So essentially, after probably, if you see someone being blocking and being a blocker for many times in, let's say, 2 weeks, you probably have a good sense that there's some issue happening there, right? So you pretty much identify hotspot. But this actually not not necessarily a productive issue, right? There can be some other issue. I think then the first step I usually will take that I would just to have similar to essentially can use like one-on-one or kind of had either a regular one-on-one or kind of ad hoc discussion one-on-one as well to actually identify the issue, right? So they're usually, I mean, actually more often than not, it's sometimes either it's a communication issue, right? So essentially, the context is not 100% complete, right? So sometimes there is can be an expectation issue, right? So essentially, it can be that the engineer working on this project is assuming we are targeting for a much higher level of completeness, but it can be that the initial version is more important to get it in place so that it can unblock all other stakeholders or other team members to move forward, right? So this is can be expectation issues, right? And sometimes it can be that it's actually a performance or productive issue, right? So if that's the case, then I guess there are usually, in my past experience, there are usually kind of two kind of reasons. One reason probably that there lacks a good alignment between the engineer's interest versus and the thing that he or she needs to do right now. I guess that if that's the case, then we'll actually need a long-term solution that so we can either provide some internal mobility or we can provide some more opportunity for the engineer to explore within the team or within the company, right? So the second possibility usually can be that probably the engineer doesn't have the deep knowledge in some of the domains that is required for this task yet. I guess this then this is actually a good chance to pair the engineer with someone with more expertise from the team or across other teams to help to pair up, right? So this will give a chance for the engineer to wrap up more rapidly on that topic, and also this actually will foster a very healthy environment within a team that there's always will be a pair kind of essentially when people kind of work in pairs, there will be chances of them to kind of learn from each other mutually, right? Yeah, I guess that's probably kind of the way I will use to identify issues and then figure out what will be the right correct action to improve the productivity for that hotspots.
That's great. I love the idea that you shared that when you are that one of the reasons why the developer becomes unproductive is that usually, as I see him, lacks some knowledge or some skills that the manager need to identify and help him to fill that with the internal opportunity, for example, to learn new skill or pair up with some internal mentor, if I understood that right, to don't stay blocked by the lack of current skills. That's interesting thing.
I wanted to add to it.
Sure, please.
I think I love that idea as well, like, pair programming and kind of passing on the knowledge, and, enabling the skills within another developer, because everyone is not familiar with all parts of the code. And to add to that, I think one thing that can come in very handy is engineering managers kind of putting a lot of focus on documentation efforts. So overall, technical documentation, making sure that code has good comments, and then if everything is documented, any developer wants to kind of delve into some part of the code, they have at least some context. Obviously, they'll still need to pair program and get the overall holistic idea, but some kind of documentation effort definitely helps as well.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah, I guess that's one of the factors that manager can actually control to that I have mentioned in the beginning is so to say when the developers simply don't understand what he need to be done and this is primarily how you can influence. Okay, guys, we all actually, as we've been sharing of this, we've talking about the role of engineer manager and in the ways how can influence productivity. And the thing that I do hear from you both, that manager is a sort of um, roadblocks remover from the developer's way and from developers team way. But how you can actually help engineering manager to stay productive. What do you personally do when you are how you self-diagnose, so to say, if you are some kind of the psychologist for a developer who runs one-on-ones, looking the ways they work, how the engineering manager can is it more of the self-awareness, or you are discussing your issues with the other managers on your rel level or someone higher up on the level that gives you some feedback on the way you manage, and how not only because usually in most in many companies we may experience thing when someone high manager comes into engineering manager and say, okay, this is not good, or this is good, when something extraordinary happens usually. But as we need to grow as managers, and you need to grow as managers as well, um, you need to get some more regular feedback on regular things. How do you actually or are you doing it anyhow? What do you do to understand your own productivity, where you get feedback and insights for that?
Yeah, that's very interesting question, I guess. So I guess it's true, as engineering managers, I mean, usually most of engineering managers have their own managers as well, right? So theirs will be one feedback channel. And also, I guess equally important, or even sometimes more important, because you might have more frequent feedbacks, is actually within your own team, right? So essentially, the feedback, as actually we all alluded to in early discussions, as having a very open culture to encourage honest and quick, I mean, real-time feedback is very important, right? So feedback will be two ways as well. So essentially, if the engineers on the team feel there is something need to be done to make sure as a team the productivity can be improved, so usually you will hear these feedbacks very quickly as well. I think that's actually is a very good source of things to identify and to put that onto your own to-do list. One common thing that, so actually a few common themes from this internal feedback, and one thing actually Dhara mentioned earlier as well is documentation, right? So knowledge sharing actually very critical, especially the team is expanding very quickly. And the second thing is that also to make sure as a whole team, you do invest some amount of time, let's say 20 or 30% of time on platform infrastructure or automation tooling, like these kind of things, right? You cannot just like 100% time only focus on production features, and then the team will becoming more and more scattered, right? So there will be lack of foundation to consolidate all the shared components within the team and so on and so forth, right? I think this is the second channel. The third channel, of course, is going to be from your peers. I think from peers, usually either it's in like half a year performance review, there will be peer reviews as well, so you can get some knowledge from there. And also for this kind of project you work on, right? Usually there will be different stakeholders, right? There will usually be a kind of a bigger group, like including your team and also some other teams, right? So in that frequent, like weekly or bi-weekly sync up or discussion, you sometimes also can identify some issues through either direct feedback from peers, or you can observe some issue being exposed there. I think that's also going to be the third channel that you can get feedback regarding how to improve productivity for your own team.
Dara, do you have something to add up?
I think Yao has kind of, put forward all the points that I had in mind. If I have to add something, I would say, yeah, so 360-degree feedback is something that comes in handy. Meeting up with fellow engineering managers and, kind of discussing the pain points. Because, there are certain engineering wide, entire engineering org wide policies, processes, which might be blocking, all the engineers, all the EMs. And sometimes, these EMs, they need to periodically meet and have a discussion about how to refine these processes such that they serve them and the engineering team. So yeah, that's all that I wanted to add with respect to, kind of unblocking the managers. Um, Other than that, yeah, feedback, 360-degree feedback, like getting that is 100%, crucial from your own manager, from your team. Um, I guess that's how you kind of keep yourself accountable. Um, and then OKRs are there as well. So
Yeah.
Okay. So guys, actually, I ran out of my questions for now, I guess, and we already pretty well get on the timing for 30 minutes as we planned. I think in the end we'll have a short blitz questions just to finish up with some more fast pace. I know it's already late evening, so pretty tired of the thing that happened, but just short answers, and then we say goodbye and see you on the next podcast, or I guess we'll decide later on the when we chat. Okay, so just a few books that you personally recommend for people to stay productive. They might be not considering of the developer productivity. What's your source of what's your source? Where you get the can you share the best books that that you love to help you stay productive?
Since actually I'm recently I'm reading this book, so this book called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. I guess it's probably, I mean, this is not like has a productivity on its title, but I guess it's kind of I think it's kind of attests to the point I was making earlier, that so productivity actually is fundamentally, I mean, my opinion is that fundamentally you need to focus on the impact, right? And the impact actually, it comes to that how you can make good strategic decisions, right, along the way, right? So I think this actually is a very good book that summarizes that. I mean, kind of goes through the principles and the philosophy behind the strategic decision making, and with good examples and bad examples as well. Actually, it's a very fascinating read. I really enjoy it.
Thank you, Dara.
So there are two books which I think will be very effective in understanding development, developer productivity, how to improve it. One is The Mythical Man Month. It's kind of a Bible written by Frederick Brooks. And then the other one is Peopleware. Forgot the author's name, I think Tom and Timothy. So these are the two books which I think will definitely be useful. And then from the management point, I recently read a book called The Manager's Path by Caroline Fourier. And this is like, if you are, on the path towards becoming an engineering manager or want to become an engineering manager, this is like the book to start with.
Yeah, I also love that book very much.
Yeah, and I personally love the people where actually like a year ago read this, haven't heard of it previously. So yeah, no, great books that you shared there. And the last question, guys, that sort of referral for any other engineering managers that you personally know. Maybe you don't know anyone who we should record the podcast with. Who you could recommend personally. Maybe it's not someone who you already know. Maybe it's someone on Twitter that you know, or who you're reading, or someone's Medium you're reading, or something.
Yeah.
Are there anyone?
So there is this one guy called, I think, Ryan Burgess, that's his name, and he has compiled a wiki of, some amazing engineering management resources. So that is definitely one person that, might have a lot of knowledge to share with us. So yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yao, you?
Yeah, it also actually reminds me of I used to read a blog, so but I forgot that author's name. So the blog is about like how, I mean, essentially when you get into a company, I mean, especially I guess a startup company as an engineering lead, and in the first 90 days, what you need to do. Actually, it's a very fascinating read. It's very long, but it's actually worth the time reading. I probably can dig that out and share with you offline, I guess.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. Okay, guys, our short blitz have come to an end, and our podcast as well. That was really great to see you there. Thank you so much for being there.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Shankar.
sounds awesome.
Yeah, thanks, yeah.
Very nice discussion with you guys. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had a great time.